Hi, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. So I'm sitting down for this video, which I don't do often just because I know it's going to be a long one. There are a ton of books coming out in July that I'm excited about. A lot of the times the books in these videos are on my radar, they're on my TBR, but I don't think I'm going to read them all. I feel like every single book that's coming out in July is one that I'm desperately dying to read. So my poor wallet, my poor TBR, I've been slumping all through June, but I can feel that shifting already, and a lot of that is due to just my excitement about these new releases. And that's odd because normally I don't find summer is the greatest time for new releases, but not this year. So we're gonna start with July 1st. We do have one book coming out. If you're watching this video, the day it's posted, I believe that this is already out on KU. So you can grab it, but I think the physical copy comes out July 1st. And this is Role Playing by Cathy, Yardley. And this is one I've talked about before because it's one of my most anticipated romances of the entire year. And the reason for that is that we're following older characters. I think they're in their 40s, late 50s. They meet on like an online, I think it's obviously a role-playing game given the title, and they decide to meet up, but I think they play different kind of characters online. So she's expecting to like meet somebody who's college age and he's expecting an older woman. I think that's how it goes, but they are of the same age and there's obviously chemistry. And the reason that she's online anyways doing the gaming is that she made a deal with her son that if she becomes more social, he will as well. So I just think this is going to be a really sweet romance. I love the cover. I think this is the greatest cover. So July 1st, that's really, really soon. Moving on to July 4th, we have another romance because just summer screams romance. And this is Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon, who again, this is one of those authors, every year she seems to have a romance come out. Every year I'm excited about them. I put them in these videos and then I never read them. But this one sounds like just a romp, like a really, really good time. And it's following these two characters. I think they have a one-night stand and then never talk to each other again. And then she's a ghostwriter and he's like a C-list celebrity and she ends up ghostwriting his book. They talk about their one night. She wasn't very satisfied. They make a deal where she decides to teach him things, and that is the premise. And that's kind of giving me like the kiss quotient, which I loved. So I think this is just going to be a fun romp, a good time. I really do need to try something by Rachel Lynn Solomon. So shout out to the author for sending me an e-arc of Claws and Contrivances. This is the sequel to Scales and Sensibility, and this is by Stephanie Burgis. And Skills and Sensibility was one of the finalists for Spiffbo last year, which you know that I read all the finalists for Cassidy's project, and this was one of the standouts for me. And the author actually saw my video talking about it and reached out to me on email and offered me an e-arc of the second one, and of course I took it. I stopped everything I was reading and I read that right away, and it was exactly what I needed. It brought me so much joy. It is following the sister of the character from the first book. So these are just like Regency romances with dragons, and in this world dragons are carried by the wealthy and people in high society. They are small, they are powerless, so they think, and they're just like a status symbol. And we are following Rose, and I loved her story so much. So all the sisters are separated and sent to different family members, and Rose is living with distant cousins who really embrace her. They are not wealthy, their house is crumbling, but they are so happy and supportive, and I just loved all of the cousins, her aunt and uncle and everything. It was just so sweet. And she happens to find this dragon, and then there's also fake dating, and it's kind of a Northanger Abbey vibe. I think one of the cousins is obsessed with Gothic literature. I don't know, I just thought the whole thing was really sweet. If you like the first one, the vibes are similar. If you're looking for cozy fantasies but you love dragons, please try this series. So that comes out July 10th. I absolutely adored it. Then July 11th, we have a new book from an author who I'm reading from right now, and that is Darcy Coates. I am listening to From Below and I'm loving it. So her newest one is called Dead of Winter, which I guess I will save for the winter time. I have so many of her other books that I can get to before that one, but I know some of you are going to be excited because she's a well-loved horror author, and this is an isolated horror kind of thriller that it is set in a remote cabin in the snowy wilderness, and it will teach you to trust no one. There are 8 strangers, 1 killer, nowhere left to turn. So I think that's just going to be standard Darcy Coates. It's going to be really tense. I think she's good at building tension, so that'll be an interesting one. Next is a romance that I think is the 4th book in a series, but I don't think you have to read these in order. Honestly, it was the cover of this one that caught my eye, and this is The Only Purple House in Town by Aguirre. And this is giving me kind of the society, what is that called? The Secret Society of Irregular Witches. That's the one. It's kind of giving me that vibe, and we're following a character who is struggling, and then her great aunt passes away and leaves her this manor, and she's wants to turn the manor into an Airbnb or like a B&B in general, and that doesn't really go well. And she just ends up renting the rooms to like people who are outcast, and I think they're actually like supernatural characters. And she meets a guy who ends up renting a room from her, and they have a romance, and it's about the family of everybody that lives there. So I think that's going to be really sweet, something that I'm going to really enjoy, and I just do hope it gives me that cozy fantasy vibes that I'm always searching for. The next one is one that I hope I have read by July 11th because I have an ALC from Libro Femme, and I've been hearing incredible things from others who have listened to it. So this is Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. And what is it about romances that are set around weddings that just works for me? I think The Wedding Planner, that movie with J-Lo and Matthew McConaughey, I loved that movie. When I was a teenager, my friends and I watched that every sleepover. We were obsessed with that movie. And in this one, she is a wedding planner, so it's giving me that vibes. And she has an enemies to lovers romance with a florist. And they have to work on a high-profile wedding together, so it would help both of their careers, which does give me Wedding Planner. That was a high-profile wedding. But in this one, the brides see the chemistry between these two and are trying to set them up, not knowing their history. So I think that this is going to be so good, and everybody seems to be loving it, and I love the cover as well, and I just love like a wedding romance. I don't know what that's about. And then doing a complete 180, we have an epic fantasy, and this is the Judas Blossom by Stephan. This is book 1, and then Nightingale and the Falcon, which I like that series name, and it's an imaginative and sprawling epic fantasy reimagining the Mongol Empire's invasion of Persia, following the lives and treacherous journeys of 4 key figures in the heart of the war. You know I like historical fantasy, but this is outside of what I typically read, which is exciting for me and something I'm looking for. So it's set in 1260 Persia, and we're following 2 of Genghis Khan's sons. I think the wife to one of those sons, and then a rebel of some kind. And I've seen some great early reviews for this. I know a lot of people got arcs and are really enjoying it. So that sounds like something that I can really appreciate, but also pushes me out of my comfort zone a little bit. Another romance, to go back to that, this is actually the sequel to American Royalty, and this is by Tracey Livesay. I read American Royalty. It was not my favorite romance, to be honest with you, but I am still curious enough to try The Duchess Effect, which is the sequel, because I did appreciate Danny as a character. I just wasn't as invested in the prince and in the romance. But I do think what this is doing is interesting, because normally in a romance you get them meeting, falling in love, they're happily ever after. But this book is a sequel following the same characters, and it's what happens after you get that happily ever after. And this is pretty much like Meghan Markle, Prince Harry retelling. She is an American, she is famous in her own right, and she marries this prince from the UK. And so now they are in love, and they're having to deal with the fallout from the media. And I think there's another scandal with the royal family, and they like to use this relationship for good press, that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting. It's different from the normal romance sequels that we tend to get. However, this next one is so unsettling to me, and it's so strange that it is, because it's just a picture of a fruit. But there's something so creepy about like the close-up of a pomegranate. And this is Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. And this is said to be literary fiction with a bit of sci-fi, which is what I like. I have always loved literary fiction. I've definitely moved away from that since I started this channel. And now I like my literary fiction to also have a bit of a twist and to have some sci-fi. I think that just comes from my love of Kazuo Ishiguro, to be honest with you. So this is following a woman who lives in Silicon Valley, and she works for a startup, and she's struggling. It's just toxic. Everything about it is toxic. And she wants to get out, but of course there's those societal pressures. And then it also says she's never alone. From her earliest memory, a miniature black hole has been her constant companion. It feeds on her depression and anxiety, growing and shrinking in relation to her distress. The black hole watches, but it also waits. Its relentless pull draws Cathy ever closer as the world around her unravels. So that little twist definitely intrigues me, and this cover gives me the creeps. So I definitely am curious about it. I have a friend here now watching me because she thinks it's strange I'm sitting here, so we'll just let her be my audience. So if you see me looking over at her, I can't help myself, she's so cute. But there she is. The next one is Dark Water Daughter by H.M. Long, and this is book 1 in the Winter Sea. And I actually was sent an ARC, unsolicited, of this author's first book. I think it's Hall of Smoke, that I've kept because I really do want to try it. But this sounds really interesting, and it's pirates. And I've said this before, I'm determined to find a pirate book that I like, and this might be it. I think it's almost kind of a romance between a pirate and what seems like a siren, but they're calling it a storm singer in this book. A storm singer and a pirate hunter, so a pirate hunter, that's interesting, join forces against a deathless pirate lord in this swashbuckling Jacobean adventure on the high seas. So we'll see how I feel about that. It's something I want to love. I want to love books set on the high seas. I want to like pirate books, but they just don't typically work for me. But this one sounds like it's really unique. It says, come sail the winter sea for action-packed, high-stake adventures, rich characterization, and epic plots full of intrigue and betrayal. So I'm hopeful about it. Next up we have a sci-fi, and this is The Splinter in the Sky by Kemi Ashing-Giwa, and this is really interesting to me. It's a debut space opera, and there's a lot about it that intrigues me, but the most intriguing thing is that our main character is a tea expert. So I love that. I love when characters have like a weird passion. I'm into that, and all she wants to do is focus on the tea, but she gets wrapped up in this revenge plot. So it says it takes a young tea expert who is taken as a political prisoner and recruited to spy on government officials, a role that may empower her to win back her nation's independence. So yeah, I'm always down for some interesting sci-fi. That is something that I love, and I've been just embracing that this year, that I'm really a sci-fi fan. The reviews for this have been mixed, but I'm still really curious about it. I love the premise, I love the cover, and this is The Saint of Bright Doors. And this is about a city where there just happens to be these bright doors everywhere that nobody really knows what lies behind them or knows how to access them. So I'm just really curious how you get behind there, what is behind there. And then we're following a character named Etter, and it says that his mother tore his shadow from him. She raised him as a weapon to kill his sainted father and destroy the religion rising up in his sacred footsteps. Now Etter is unchosen, lapsed in his devotion to both his parents. He casts no shadow, is untethered by gravity, and sees devils and anti-gods everywhere he goes. With no path to follow, Etter would like to be anything but himself. Does the answer wait on the other side of one of the bright doors? Yes, I do want to try that desperately. Another really interesting one is Ebony Gate. This is the first book in the Phoenix Horde, and it's by two authors, Julia V and Ken Bebelle. And this is it says it's a female John Wick story with dragon magic set in a contemporary San Francisco Chinatown. Dragon magic. Yes, please. And there's also something about like retired assassins coming back to do one last job that I like, and I think that's what this is about. Our main character was actually known as the Butcher of Beijing, and she now lives a quiet life in San Francisco importing antiques. But when a tsunami, a god of death itself, calls in a family blood debt, Amiko must recover the Ebony Gate that holds back the hungry ghosts of the Yomi underworld, or forfeit her soul as the anchor. What's a retired assassin to do but save the city by the bay from an army of the dead? Does that not sound so good? I have just great feelings about that one. Still a few more on July 11th. The next one is Boys in the Valley by Fracassi, and this is a horror that I know Sin from Sin's Book Nook adored. I'm gonna leave her thoughts on that down below because that is what sold me on it. I'd never heard of this author or this book before that, and this takes place in a Catholic orphanage for boys, and our main character is an orphan, and his family was murdered, and he makes a really good life here for himself until one stormy night a group of men arrive at their door, one of whom is badly wounded, occult symbols carved into his flesh. His death releases an ancient evil that spreads like sickness, infecting St. Vincent's and the children within. Soon boys begin acting differently, forming groups, taking sides. Others turn up dead. And I trust Sin's horror and thriller recommendations, and the reviews for this are incredible already. So yes, I am definitely curious. Then another romance is You with a View by Jessica Joyce, and I have seen this all over Bookstagram already, and normally don't like road trips, especially road trip romances. I don't know what that's about, but it's not my thing, but I have just bought into the hype for this one. It looks really sweet. It says two high school enemies must reunite for a road trip inspired by their grandparents' broken engagement in this electric debut romance. So I think these two, obviously they were high school rivals, and then her grandmother passes away. She's going through her grandmother's things, and she finds some folder that leads her to believe that her grandmother was forced to break up an engagement, and the person she was engaged to just happens to be the grandfather of this guy that she hates. And they were supposed to go on like this elaborate honeymoon together, and she wants to do that, go on that journey, and she ends up taking his grandfather with her, so he tags along as well. So, and I'm assuming they fall in love, it is a romance after all, but I think that's kind of a sweet premise, and I'm open to trying it because, you know, road trips, not my favorite thing, but this could be really cute. Finally moving on to July 18th, next we have The Jasad Heir by Sara Hashem. And 10 years ago, the kingdom of Jasad burned, its magic outlawed, its royal family murdered down to the last child. At least that's what Sylvia wants people to believe. I love that trope where you think that an entire bloodline has been murdered, but secretly there's an heir somewhere. I don't know, I kind of am into that. And I think that this, yeah, it's an Egyptian-inspired debut fantasy. A fugitive queen strikes a deadly bargain with her greatest enemy and finds herself embroiled in a complex game that could resurrect her scorched kingdom or leave it in ashes forever. And everybody seems to be hyped about this one. The cover's incredible. I'm hyped as well. The next one is a horror that, again, would never been on my radar, but I watched a vlog where Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany read it. I'm gonna leave a link to that down below. And she really related to it and thought it was really well done. So this is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. It's a searing and earnest horror debut about the demons the queer community faces in America, the price of keeping secrets, and finding the courage to burn it down. They'll scare you straight to hell. So I think this is a horror set at a conversion camp, but I've heard it's really well done and a lot of people are loving it, and Chuck Tingle is a Hugo Award finalist. So definitely one that I want to give a try. I just got all these recommendations from other booktubers I'm noticing, but this is one that Michelle from Michelle's Library was really surprised by and really liked, and this is Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. Now I've said this before, I'm not really loving thrillers right now, but this one intrigues me, and she said if you liked Eleanor Oliphant, you're gonna like this, which I did appreciate that book. So I want to give it a try. And it says Sally Diamond cannot understand why what she did was so strange. She was only doing what her father told her to do, to put him out with the rubbish when he died. Now Sally is the center of attention, not only from the hungry media and worried police, but also a sinister voice from the past she has no memory of. As she begins to discover the horrors of her childhood, recluse Sally steps into the world for the first time, making new friends, finding independence, and learning that people don't always mean what they say. We have a new one from Sara Desai, and this is To Have and to Heist. So if you like more of an adventure romance, this looks like a good one for you. So it says, to exonerate her best friend, one woman must mastermind a jewelry heist during the wedding of the season in this hilarious romantic comedy caper. So our main character's had a streak of bad luck, nothing's going right for her, and then her best friend is arrested for stealing a necklace, and she ends up working with this guy to find out who really stole the necklace to exonerate her best friend. Kind of a silly premise, but I can get into that. I do like these like caper romances. They're just a good time. I know I just said that thrillers aren't my favorite thing right now, but you make them a sci-fi thriller and I'm into it. So I am desperate to read The Deep Sky. And this is an enthralling sci-fi thriller debut about a mission into deep space that begins with a lethal explosion that leaves the survivors questioning the loyalty of the crew. Should hit the fan on Earth. That is how this begins. So a select group of people are sent up into space to save humanity or to repopulate somewhere else. And very early on, an explosion happens and people are killed, and our main character was the only witness, so obviously the suspicion is on her. And they have been knocked off course during this as well. So it's up to her to find out who really did this and what's going on. So yeah, good times. I'm into a sci-fi thriller, and a lot of the sci-fi thrillers I have read are set on Earth, so the fact that this one actually takes place in space is intriguing. Then we have a YA horror that also seems to be a sapphic romance, and this is A Guide to the Dark. It's following these two best friends who are on a road trip. I think their car breaks down, they end up stranded, they have to go to this motel, and they stay in room 9. One of the friends like sees a man, is really creeped out by this room. The other friend is so distracted by her feelings for the other girl that she just doesn't notice what's happening. But then they learn that 8 people have actually died in this room and they have to survive. So that is creepy, and also I'm interested in the romance part of that as well. And you know that I appreciate like a YA thriller horror. I don't know why, I just think they're fun, especially in the summertime. Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. I have never read from Chloe Gong before. I'm always curious about her stuff. I know that she tends to do Shakespeare retellings from what I can tell, and this one's an Antony and Cleopatra retelling. There is a lot going on in this synopsis. I'm not going to read it all to you. I'll leave a link to all of these on Goodreads. I just know that Chloe Gong is a really popular author, and I have a feeling that this will show up in a couple subscription boxes. So yeah, I want to put that one on your radar for sure. Moving on to July 25th, the first one is The Weaver and the Witch Queen by Genevieve Kornichek, who wrote The Witch's Heart. And I did a video talking about things that I want to see more of in fiction, and one of them was non-Greek myth retellings, and so many people recommended The Witch's Heart to me that they just have to read it. Obviously people think I'm gonna love it. I think I'm gonna love it. But this new one from her sounds really, really amazing as well. And I don't hear as much buzz about this one as I did for her last one. So in case you didn't know, she does have a new book coming out. And this is the lives of 2 women, one desperate only to save her sister, the other a witch destined to become Queen of Norway, intertwine. So that sounds really good. You know that I like anything that is a retelling, and obviously this author is really popular, so that's one to check out. Here, the next one is one I had no idea was coming. The first book I thought was a standalone, and suddenly we're getting a sequel, but I'm not complaining because I really thought the first one was good. So this is House of Roots and Ruin by Aaron A. Craig. This is the sequel to the House of Salt and Sorrow. Is that what it's called? You know, these titles, they all just leave my brain. But that one felt like a really true standalone, so I'm surprised we're getting a sequel. But I read the synopsis of this one, and it kind of spoils something from the first book, so I'm not going to tell you anything about it. But the first book is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, which is really creepy, very gothic, set on an island, and you're just following these sisters trying to survive. There's hauntings, there's ghosts, there's also a romance, and this one follows a character from that one. So I'm intrigued. I liked the writing. I'm hoping that we're getting the same setting because I thought that was really, really atmospheric, and I do like gothic stories, you know this. So yeah, I had no idea we were getting that, but I'm excited about it. Then we have one that I'm actually reading an e-arc of right now and enjoying. So this is Their Vicious Games by Joelle Wellington. This is YA thriller, and the dialogue, I will say, is a little odd in this, but I can look past it. And the first half was angsty because this is YA, and we need to get to the setup, but now it's so interesting, and it is a mix of like Ace of Spades, The Way to Blood, and Squid Games. So we're following a character who goes to a really elite high school, and she's graduating in the opening scene, and she had early admission to Yale, but something happened where that was all taken away from her, and now she is doing this competition where the person who wins gets to go to any school they want. They're really set up for life, and they give examples of other women who have won this and what they're doing now and how powerful they are and how successful they are. But she doesn't know the extent of the challenges that have to happen in order for her to win. That is all I will say. And it's really interesting, and I'm just having a great time with it. So yeah, I will give you my full thoughts on that soon. I'm trying to be better about updating on group reads, but I'm just not good at it. But you'll hear my thoughts on it hopefully in my June wrap-up, because I still have time to finish that before the end of the month. Two more and then I will let you go. The next one is Bonesmith by Nikki Pal-Pareto, who wrote, what is that book called? Does it say on here? Yeah, the Crown of Feathers trilogy. I had the first two. I still need to read them, but they come highly recommended to me. So this is said to be Gideon the Ninth, which I know so many people love, and Game of Thrones, but like the White Walkers. So how cool does that sound? And it's a dark YA adult fantasy about a disgraced ghost-fighting warrior who must journey into the haunted wasteland to rescue a kidnapped prince. And I think that's all you need to know about that one. This cover is everything. I should probably read her first series first, but there's something about how dark this one looks that's really calling to me right now. And finally, one that I know so many people are excited for, and I am as well. This is The Sun and the Void by Gabrielle Romero Lacruz. So this is inspired by the history and folklore of South America, which I appreciate, and it's a sweeping epic fantasy of colonialism, ancient magic, and two young women's quest for belonging. So obviously this follows two characters. Rena is desperate. She's stuck living on the edge of society. Her only salvation lies in an invitation from a grandmother she's never known, but the journey is dangerous and prayer can't always avert disaster. And then Eva is unwanted. She's illegitimate and of mixed heritage and is her family's shame. She tries her best to be perfect and to hide her oddities, but Eva is hiding a secret magic calls to her. So that just sounds fantastic. I love like a dual POV fantasy, and yeah, I think we've all been waiting for this one for a while. So there are a lot of exciting books coming out in July. I know I've probably missed some as well, so let me know down below which books you are excited to read. I'd love to talk about these in the comments. So thanks again for your support. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.